The meeting room was huge and filled with strange lights from 1,000 different worlds. Captain Jake Morrison stood in the center, feeling very small but trying not to show it. Next to him was Commander Linda Hayes, who looked calm on the outside, but Jake could see her hands were tight fists. They had been talking to the Galactic Council for 3 months now. 3 whole months of meetings, presentations, and discussions. Earth had sent its best people. They brought evidence of human technology, art, music, and science. They showed videos of Earth cities, talked about human history, and explained why humanity wanted to join the galaxy community. But now Jake understood the truth. The Council never wanted humans as equals. They never did. The Thalrian ambassador stood in front of them. It looked like a giant crystal that could move and talk. It had 6 arms that moved in the air as it spoke. The creature was beautiful to look at, but its words were ugly. "The human delegation will accept our terms," the Thalrian said. Its voice sounded like wind chimes, but there was no kindness in it. "Your species has shown that you can be useful. We offer you protectorate status. You should be happy. Many species don't even get this chance. We could have just blocked your planet and kept you there forever." Jake felt his anger growing hot in his chest. Protectorate status. He knew what that meant. It meant Earth would not be free. It meant other species would control human resources. It meant humanity would be servants, not partners. "We came here to join the Council as members," Linda said. Her voice was sharp and clear. "We came in peace and friendship." A huge reptile creature made a sound that might have been laughing. This was the Wehrmacht delegate. It was 3 times taller than Jake and covered in dark green scales. "Peace and friendship are for strong species," the Wehrmacht said. "Your species is weak. You have no powerful military. You have no control over important trade routes. You have nothing that makes you special. Take what we offer or go back to your little planet and wait. We will send ships to make sure you obey our rules." Jake looked down at the screen in his hand. On it was the treaty document. He had read it 5 times already. The treaty said Earth's oceans would be managed by Council overseers. Human military forces would be disbanded. The colonies humans had built on Mars and the moons of Jupiter would be given to other species who the Council said were more responsible. He thought about the people back home on Earth, billions of humans who had celebrated when the Council ships first arrived. People who threw parties in the streets, children who dreamed of visiting other worlds and meeting alien friends, scientists who couldn't wait to share knowledge with advanced civilizations. All of those dreams were about to die. Jake put the screen down on the table very carefully. He wanted to throw it, to smash it, but he kept control. "No," Jake said. Just one word, but it felt like the most important word he had ever spoken. Every creature in the room became quiet. Some of the delegates moved in their seats. Others made sounds of surprise. The word seemed impossible to them. "What did you say?" the Thalrian asked. Its crystalline body flashed with colors that Jake thought might mean anger. "I said no," Jake repeated. "Humanity rejects your treaty. We reject your terms. We reject your council. Earth is withdrawing its application for membership." The Wehrmacht stood up to its full height. It was very tall and very scary. "You cannot do this. You cannot just walk away. There will be consequences. Bad consequences." Linda moved to stand next to Jake. She was shorter than him, but she stood just as straight and proud. "We understand," she said. The room exploded with noise. Delegates from dozens of species started talking at once. Some seemed angry. Others seemed confused. A few seemed almost excited, like they were watching something interesting happen. The Thalrian raised all 6 of its arms, and the room became quiet again. "Let me be very clear," it said, and now its voice was cold like ice. "No species has ever rejected the Council before. No species has ever walked away from our offer. If you do this, humanity will be alone. You will have no friends in the galaxy, no trade partners, no protection. When enemies come for you, and they will come, no one will help you." Jake felt fear in his stomach, but he didn't let it show on his face. "Then we'll face those enemies alone," he said. "We'll face them as free people, not as your slaves." He turned to leave. Linda followed him. Their boots made loud sounds on the crystal floor as they walked toward the huge doors at the end of the chamber. "You are making a terrible mistake," another delegate called out. Jake didn't know which species it was. "You are dooming your planet." Jake stopped at the door. He turned back to look at all the assembled delegates. There were representatives from 200 different species in that room. Some looked like animals from Earth. Others looked like nothing he could describe. Some were clouds of gas in containers. Others were machines with artificial intelligence. All of them were staring at him and Linda. "Maybe we are making a mistake," Jake said. "But it's our mistake to make. That's what freedom means. Earth bows to no one." The doors opened with a sound like thunder. Jake and Linda walked through them, and the doors closed behind them with a final boom that echoed through the corridors. Outside in the hallway, Linda let out a long breath. "We really just did that," she said. "Yeah," Jake said. "We did. What happens now?" Jake looked at her. They both knew what would happen now. The council would be angry. They would send ships. They would try to force humanity to obey. "Now we go home," Jake said. "We go home and we prepare." Their ship was waiting for them at the docking bay. It was called the Columbus, named after an old Earth explorer. As they flew away from the council station, Jake looked back at it one more time. It was a massive structure floating in space with ships from 1,000 worlds coming and going. Humanity had wanted to be part of that, but not at the cost of their freedom. Never at that cost. "Send a message to Earth Command," Jake told the communications officer. "Tell them we're coming home. Tell them to activate Protocol Horizon. Tell them we said no." The officer nodded and started typing. Jake sat in the captain's chair and watched the stars. Somewhere out there, the council was probably already planning their response. Somewhere out there, ships were getting ready to teach humanity a lesson. Let them come, Jake thought. "We'll be ready." Director Helen Carter stood by the window in the Oval Office and watched the sun setting over Washington. The city looked peaceful and beautiful. People were walking home from work. Cars moved through the streets. Everything seemed normal. But Helen knew that nothing would be normal again after today. President Richard Graham sat at his desk reading the report for the third time. He kept shaking his head slowly. "They really walked away," he said quietly. "Jake Morrison and Linda Hayes really told the council no and walked out." "Yes, sir," Helen said. Captain Morrison felt he had no choice. The treaty terms were impossible to accept. If we had signed it, Earth would have lost everything that makes us free. The president put down the report and rubbed his eyes. He looked tired. He had been president for 2 years, and in that time he had dealt with many problems. Economic troubles, natural disasters, political fights. But nothing like this. Nothing that could affect the entire future of humanity. "What do we do now?" Graham asked. Helen turned from the window to face him. "Now we prepare, sir. Admiral Danny Price is already bringing back all our ships from deep space. Every exploration vessel, every research ship, every colony transport. We're bringing them all home. Dr. Karen White is working on new defensive weapons. We're putting guns on space stations. We're building more ships as fast as we can." "And Protocol Horizon?" the president asked. "We're implementing it now, sir. Protocol Horizon." It was a plan that had been made in secret over the past year. As the negotiations with the council had gone badly, Earth's military leaders had started planning for the worst. Protocol Horizon was simple in concept but huge in scope. If first contact failed, humanity would retreat behind its defenses, close its doors to the galaxy, and spend decades building up technology and military strength. When humans finally emerged again, they would be strong enough that no one could push them around, but it meant isolation. It meant decades of being alone. It meant giving up the dream of walking among the stars as friends and partners. "How long do we have?" Graham asked. "We don't know, sir. The council has never had a species say no before. We're in new territory, but intelligence thinks we have maybe 2 weeks, maybe a month. They'll want to make an example of us. If they let humanity get away with defying them, other species might try the same thing." The president stood up and walked to the window. He stood next to Helen and looked out at the city. "I never wanted this," he said. "When the council ships first appeared, I thought it was the best day in human history. First contact, proof that we weren't alone, a chance to join something bigger than ourselves. We all thought that, sir," Helen said softly. "Now we're preparing for war. We're preparing to defend ourselves, sir. That's different." The president was quiet for a moment, then nodded. "You're right. Send out the orders. Do whatever needs to be done." Helen left the Oval Office and went to the operations center in the basement. It was a big room full of screens and computers and people working hard. When she walked in, everyone looked up. "The president has given authorization," Helen announced. "Protocol Horizon is fully active. Make it happen. The room burst into activity. Messages went out across the solar system. On Mars, the colony governor received orders to start building defensive fortifications. On the Moon, Tycho Station began converting its research facilities into weapon platforms. The shipyards near Jupiter started working around the clock to build new warships. Commander Peter Santos was at Tycho Station when the orders came through. He was in the command center with Lieutenant Amy Foster, watching the big screen that showed space around the Moon. "It's really happening," Amy said. She was young, only 25, and this was her first real assignment after training. "We're going to fight the Council." Peter was older, almost 50, and he had been in the military for 30 years. He had fought in the Mars Rebellion when he was young. He had commanded ships in anti-piracy operations. But he had never fought aliens before. No human had. "We're going to defend ourselves," Peter said, correcting her gently. "There's a difference." "Is there?" Amy asked. "They're going to come with their ships and their weapons. They're going to try to make us obey." "That sounds like a fight to me." Peter couldn't argue with that. He looked at the screen and thought about his daughter back on Earth. Melissa was 15 years old. She loved science and wanted to be an astronaut someday. She had been so excited when the Council ships arrived. She had made Peter promise to get her an alien autograph if he could. Now he was preparing to shoot at those same aliens. "Do you think we can win?" Amy asked. It was a good question. The Council had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of Earth's. Their ships were faster, their weapons were stronger, their shields were better. On paper, it wasn't even a fair fight. But Peter had learned something in his 30 years of military service. Technology wasn't everything. Strategy mattered. Tactics mattered. And most importantly, motivation mattered. The Council was coming to punish a disobedient species. Humanity was fighting for its freedom, for its home, for its children. "I think we have a chance," Peter said. "Not a great chance, but a chance. And sometimes that's enough." Amy smiled a little. "I hope you're right." On Earth, in a secret facility in Nevada, Dr. Karen White was working with her team of scientists. They had been given 6 months to develop weapons that could hurt Council ships, 6 months to make up for centuries of technological difference. It seemed impossible, but Karen had never been good at accepting impossible. "Show me the simulation again," she told her assistant, Greg Turner. Greg typed on his computer, and a video played on the big screen. It showed a Council ship, one of their small fighters. Then it showed what happened when one of Karen's new weapons hit it. The Council ship's shields flickered and failed. The weapon went right through. "The quantum disruptor works," Greg said, "at least in simulation. We won't know if it really works until we try it on a real Council ship." "Then we better hope we get that chance," Karen said. She looked at the numbers on the screen. "How many can we build in 2 weeks? If we work around the clock? Maybe 50. Maybe 100 if we're lucky. 50 weapons against an entire Council fleet. It wasn't much, but it was something. All across human space, people were preparing. Factory workers built weapons. Engineers designed new ships. Soldiers trained for combat. Civilians volunteered to help in any way they could. Nobody knew if it would be enough. Nobody knew if humanity could really stand against a power that controlled most of the galaxy. But they were going to try, because Jake Morrison had been right. Freedom was worth fighting for. It was worth dying for. On a small colony on Titan, Saturn's largest moon, a woman named Lisa Grant watched the news with her 2 children. The news showed President Graham giving a speech. "We didn't want this," the president said. "We came to the stars in peace, but we will not trade our freedom for safety. We will not bow to tyranny. Whatever comes, we will face it together, as free people." Lisa's son, who was 8 years old, looked up at her. "Mom, are we going to be okay?" Lisa pulled him close and held him tight. "Yes, baby. We're going to be okay. We're humans. We're tougher than we look." She hoped she was telling the truth. She hoped humanity's courage would be enough. Because the alternative was too terrible to think about. The warning came at 3 a.m, Earth time. Alarms started screaming across every human military facility in the solar system. Admiral Danny Price was awake instantly, running from his quarters to the command deck of the Earth spaceship Defiance. "Report," he shouted as he burst through the doors. 15 ships, sir, said Communications Officer Greg Turner. They just appeared at the edge of the solar system. Quantum signatures match Council military vessels. They're heading our way. Danny looked at the big tactical display. 15 red dots were moving toward the inner solar system. toward Earth. At the front was a massive ship, much bigger than the others. "That's the Infinite Harmony," said Lieutenant Sam Briggs from the tactical station. "It's a Thalrian battlecruiser. Intelligence says it has destroyed 17 different civilizations over the past 1,000 years. 17 civilizations." Danny let that number sink in. This wasn't some minor council patrol. They had sent one of their most powerful warships. Around the Defiance, the rest of Earth's defense fleet was moving into position. 42 ships in total. Some were military vessels that had been built in the past few years. Others were converted civilian ships, cargo haulers and passenger transports that had been fitted with weapons. Against a fleet like the one approaching, 42 ships didn't seem like much. "How long until they reach us?" Danny asked. 6 hours at their current speed," Sam replied. 6 hours. Danny looked around at his crew. They were young, most of them. Earth's space military was only 10 years old. None of these people had ever fought in a real space battle. Neither had Danny, for that matter. Humanity had no experience with space warfare. They were about to get a very fast education. "Send a message to all ships," Danny ordered. "Battle stations. Execute defensive formation Sierra, and someone get me some coffee." 1 hour later, a message came from the Council fleet. The face that appeared on the screen was the Thalrian commander. Its crystalline body glowed with colors that seemed to shift and change. "Humans of Earth," the Thalrian said. Its voice was calm and cold. "The Galactic Council has reviewed your rejection of our generous offer. We find it unacceptable. You have 1 hour to accept protectorate status and surrender your military forces. If you do not comply, we will enforce the Council's will by force. This is your only warning." The screen went dark. The bridge was silent for a moment. "So that's it," Greg said quietly. "We submit or we fight." Danny stood up from his command chair. He thought about his wife back on Earth. He thought about his 2 sons. He thought about all the billions of humans who were depending on him and his fleet to protect them. "Open a channel to the Council fleet," Danny ordered. "Channel open, sir," Greg said. Danny took a breath. "This is Admiral Danny Price of Earth Defense Command. You have entered our star system without permission. This is a violation of our sovereignty. You have 1 hour to leave. If you do not leave, we will consider your presence an act of war and respond accordingly." There was a pause. Then the Thalrian commander appeared again. This time its colors were brighter, more intense. "You dare to threaten us," it said, and now there was anger in its voice. "You possess no weapons that can harm our vessels. Our shields are impenetrable. Our weapons can destroy planets. You have no chance of victory. Surrender now and we will show mercy." Danny smiled, though his heart was pounding. "I guess we'll have to see about that. Price out." He cut the transmission and turned to Sam. "Are all the satellites in position?" "Yes, sir. All 300 are active and ready." The satellites. That was humanity's secret weapon. The thing the Council didn't know about. For the past 6 weeks, small automated satellites had been deployed throughout the inner solar system. They were disguised as space debris, as broken equipment, as nothing important. The Council's sensors had probably detected them but dismissed them as junk. They weren't junk. Each one contained a quantum disruptor, Dr. Karen White's invention. The disruptors generated a field that interfered with the exotic physics that made Council shields and faster-than-light drives work. The effect only lasted for 90 seconds, but 90 seconds could be a very long time in combat. "All ships," Danny said into the fleet-wide channel, "prepare to execute Operation Orion on my mark. Remember your training. Remember what we're fighting for. Earth is counting on us. Don't let her down." The Council fleet advanced. The Infinite Harmony led the way, confident and unstoppable. The other 14 ships followed in a perfect formation. On the Defiance's bridge, everyone watched the tactical display. The red dots got closer and closer to the green dots that represented Earth's fleet. "They're in range," Sam said. 15 seconds until optimal firing position." Danny's hands gripped the arms of his command chair. Everything depended on the next few minutes. If the satellites didn't work, if Dr. Karen's theory was wrong, the battle would be over before it really began. "All ships, scatter formation," Danny ordered. "Make them think we're running." Earth's 42 ships broke formation and began moving away from each other, as if in panic. The Council fleet pursued, spreading out to chase multiple targets. "Now," Danny said quietly. Throughout the inner solar system, 300 satellites activated simultaneously. The quantum disruptors came online, generating their interference field. It was invisible to the naked eye, but the effects were immediate. On every council ship, alarms started screaming. Shields flickered and failed. Faster than light drives shut down. For the first time in centuries, the council fleet was vulnerable. All ships fire at will, Danny shouted. Earth's fleet struck with everything they had. The Defiance fired its main railgun, launching a tungsten projectile at a significant fraction of the speed of light. Without shields to stop it, the projectile punched through the hull of a council destroyer like a bullet through paper. All across the battlefield, the same scene played out. Council ships that had seemed invincible moments ago were suddenly taking damage. 2 more destroyers exploded. A cruiser lost power and began drifting. A frigate broke in half. The Infinite Harmony, the great battlecruiser, took 3 direct hits. Its shields tried to regenerate but kept failing as the disruptor field continued to interfere. A massive explosion tore through its engineering section. 90 seconds. That was how long the disruptors could maintain the field before they burned out. Danny counted every second. When the field finally failed, the council ship's shields came back online. But the damage was done. 3 ships were destroyed. 5 more were badly damaged. The remaining 7 ships, including the wounded Infinite Harmony, suddenly weren't so confident anymore. They're breaking off, Sam reported. They're retreating. Danny watched the tactical display as the red dots turned and began moving away, back toward the edge of the solar system. The great council fleet, which had come to punish humanity, was running away. The bridge erupted in cheers. Crew members were hugging each other, shouting in joy and relief. Greg was crying. Sam was laughing. Danny sat in his chair and let out a long breath. They had won. Against all odds, against superior technology and numbers, they had won. But the victory felt heavy. On his secondary display, Danny could see damage reports coming in from the fleet. The destroyer Liberty had been hit before the disruptors activated. 70 people were dead. The orbital station Eden 7 had taken a direct hit when one of the council ships fired a final shot before retreating. 200 people gone in an instant. Earth had won its freedom. But the cost had been high, and Danny knew this was just the beginning. The council had sent 15 ships, and those ships had been defeated. Next time they would send more, much more. Send a message to Earth Command, Danny said quietly, his voice cutting through the celebration. Tell them we've won the battle, but tell them the war is just starting. Tell them we need to be ready for whatever comes next. The celebration died down as reality set in. They had won today, but tomorrow was uncertain. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A human fleet had defeated a council enforcement squadron. The Infinite Harmony, the legendary battlecruiser that had conquered worlds, had been forced to retreat. Impossible. Unthinkable. But true. Ambassador Eva Morrison stood in a neutral space station called Haven's Rest and watched the galaxy's reaction unfold on the news feeds. Eva was Jake Morrison's older sister, and she had been appointed as Earth's ambassador to the neutral territories, the parts of space not directly controlled by the Council. The feeds showed chaos. On the Thalrian homeworld, protesters gathered outside the government buildings demanding to know how a primitive species had defeated their military. On Vormacht stations, the ruling councils were meeting in emergency sessions. Ships were being recalled, fleets were being repositioned, but it wasn't just the council powers that were reacting. All across the galaxy, smaller species were watching and thinking. If humans could say no to the council, if humans could fight and win, what did that mean for them? The Bravani cluster has sent a message, said Eva's assistant, a young diplomat named Chris Palmer. They want to open secret communications with Earth. The Bravani were a group of smaller species who had always been pushed around by the council. They paid heavy taxes. They had to follow strict rules. They had complained for years but never dared to do anything about it. Now they were reaching out to humanity. What about the Keth Union? Eva asked. They've sent a formal diplomatic message. They want to discuss a mutual defense treaty. Eva smiled. The Keth were powerful but not part of the Council's inner circle. The Thalrians and Vormacht had always kept them at arm's length. A treaty with the Keth could change everything for humanity, but not everyone was happy about Earth's victory. On the Thalrian homeworld, in a building made of living crystal that reached into the clouds, the Council's War Council was meeting. High Chancellor Zarthun, one of the most powerful Thalrians, stood before a holographic display showing the battle. Explain to me, Zarthun said, its voice cold enough to freeze water, how 15 ships, including our most powerful battlecruiser, were defeated by a species that has barely left its own planet. The military commander who had led the fleet stood nearby. Its crystalline form was dim, showing shame and fear. They used some kind of disruptor technology, the commander said. It shut down our shields and drives. We had no warning. The technology was hidden in small satellites that we dismissed as debris. So they outsmarted you, Zarthun said. A species we called primitive outsmarted our military. The commander didn't respond. There was nothing to say. The other species are watching, another council member said. If we don't respond strongly, if we don't punish humanity for this defiance, others will follow their example. The entire council structure could collapse. Zarthun was quiet for a long moment. Then it turned to its military advisors. Begin assembling a battle group. Not 15 ships. Not 50. I want 500 ships ready to move against Earth within 3 months. We will crush them so thoroughly that no species will ever dare to defy us again. 500 ships. It was more than had ever been assembled for a single military operation. It was enough to destroy planets. Back on Earth, in the ruins of Orbital Station Eden 7, Dr. Karen White walked through the wreckage. Her boots crunched on broken metal and glass. The station had been home to 200 people. Scientists, engineers, their families. Now it was a tomb. We found another survivor, called out Captain Steve Lawrence. He was leading the search and rescue team. She's alive but badly hurt. Karen ran to where Steve was standing. A young woman, maybe 20 years old, was trapped under a collapsed beam. Her leg was crushed and she was barely conscious. Get the medical team here now, Karen ordered. She knelt next to the woman and took her hand. You're going to be okay. We're going to get you out of here. The woman's eyes focused on Karen. Did we win? She whispered. Yes, Karen said. We won. The woman smiled a little, then passed out. As the medical team worked to free the woman, Karen stood up and looked around at the destruction. This was the cost of victory. This was what winning looked like. 200 people dead, families destroyed, children who would grow up without parents. Was it worth it? Steve asked quietly, standing next to her. Karen thought about the question. If humanity had accepted the Council's terms, Eden 7 would still be intact. Those 200 people would still be alive. But Earth would be a slave world. Humans would be second-class citizens in their own galaxy. Yes, Karen said finally, it was worth it. But I wish there had been another way. There wasn't another way, Steve said. The Council made sure of that. He was right. The Council had given humanity a choice between freedom and safety. Most species throughout history had chosen safety. Humanity had chosen freedom. On Earth, President Richard Graham stood before the world and gave a speech that would be remembered for generations. 3 weeks ago, our representatives walked away from the Galactic Council. They walked away because the Council offered us slavery dressed up as protection. 10 days ago, the Council sent ships to punish us for our defiance. Today, I can report that those ships have been defeated. Earth stands free. The crowds watching erupted in celebration. In cities across the planet, people cheered and cried and hugged each other. Humanity had won. But let me be clear, Graham continued, and the crowds grew quiet. This is not the end. This is just the beginning. The Council will not accept this defeat. They will come again with more ships and more weapons. We must be ready. We must be strong. And we must remember why we fight. We fight for freedom. We fight for our children. We fight for the right to stand tall in this galaxy. In the command center of the Outer Rim Defense Network, Commander Peter Santos watched the speech on a monitor, while simultaneously reviewing intelligence reports. The reports were not good. They're building up forces, said Captain Betty Morgan, his intelligence officer. Every Council sector is being told to contribute ships to a new battle group. Current estimates say they're assembling between 400 and 600 vessels. Peter felt cold fear in his stomach. The quantum disruptor satellites had worked once, but they were all burned out now. It would take months to build and deploy more. And even if they had them, the Council would be ready this time. They wouldn't be caught by surprise again. 400 ships, Peter said quietly. We barely survived 15. There's more, Betty said. The Vormacht are proposing a blockade of the entire human solar system. No ships in, no ships out. They want to strangle us economically while they prepare their military response. Peter looked at the star charts displayed on the wall. He thought about his daughter Melissa back on Earth. She had been so proud when he'd called to tell her about the victory. She'd said her father was a hero. He didn't feel like a hero. He felt like a man watching a storm approach, knowing he couldn't stop it. "How long do we have?" Peter asked. 3 months, maybe 4. They're being careful this time, making sure everything is perfect before they move. 3 months. It wasn't enough time. Even if humanity worked around the clock, even if they built ships and weapons faster than they ever had before, it wouldn't be enough to stand against 600 Council warships, unless something changed. Far from Earth, in the Brevani home system, a council of the Brevani cluster was meeting. 12 species were represented, all of them small, all of them weak individually but potentially strong together. "Humanity has shown us something important," said the Brevani first speaker, a creature that looked like a large insect with translucent wings. "They've shown us that the council can be resisted. They can be beaten, but at what cost?" another delegate asked. "Humanity will be destroyed when the council returns." "Is defiance worth extinction?" "Maybe the question we should ask," said a third delegate, "is whether servitude is worth survival. The council has controlled us for centuries. They take our resources. They limit our growth. They treat us like children. Maybe it's time we stood up." The debate went on for hours, but slowly a consensus formed. The Brevani cluster would reach out to humanity. They would offer support, not much, not enough to change the outcome perhaps, but something, a message that humanity was not alone. 6 months had passed since humanity's victory over the Council enforcement fleet. 6 months of preparation, of building weapons and ships, of waiting for the massive Council battle group to arrive and finish what they had started. But the battle group never came. Instead, Ambassador Eva Morrison received a message that surprised everyone. The Galactic Council requested a formal diplomatic meeting with human representatives. No threats, no demands, no preconditions, just a request to talk. Eva stood in the communications center on Haven's rest station and read the message 3 times, looking for the trap. There had to be a trap. The Council didn't just forgive defiance. They didn't simply accept defeat. "What do you think?" asked Chris Palmer, her assistant. "I think they're up to something," Eva said. "But we have to find out what." "Send a reply. Tell them we'll attend the meeting." The meeting was scheduled for 2 weeks later, at a neutral station operated by the Keth Union. Eva sent word to Earth, and they dispatched Captain Jake Morrison to join her. Jake's ship arrived at the station the day before the meeting. Brother and sister met in a private room. They hugged for a long time. "I'm glad you're okay," Eva said. "You too," Jake replied. "Have you figured out what they want yet?" "No, but I don't trust it. The intelligence reports say they've been building that massive battle group for months. 500 ships, maybe more. Then suddenly they just stop and ask for a meeting. Maybe they realize they can't win," Jake suggested. "Or maybe they're stalling for time while they prepare something worse." The next day, they went to the meeting chamber. It was much smaller than the Grand Council Hall where Jake had walked away 6 months earlier. Around the table sat representatives from the 5 major council powers, along with delegates from a dozen minor species. The Thalrian who spoke was different from the arrogant ambassador Jake had met before. This one was older. Its crystalline body showed cracks and wear, the signs of a long life. "Humanity of Earth," the Thalrian began, and its voice was different too. Not cold or commanding, but almost sad. "The Galactic Council wishes to acknowledge that mistakes were made in our initial contact with your species." Eva and Jake glanced at each other. This was not what they had expected. "We have ruled this galaxy for a long time," the Thalrian continued. "We established order when there was chaos. We created peace where there was war, but in doing so we became rigid. We developed a system that valued stability over justice. We treated new species not as potential equals, but as problems to be managed." The Vormach delegate stood up. It was smaller than the one Jake had met before and younger. "Your species showed us something we had forgotten," the Vormach said. "You showed us courage. You showed us that freedom matters more than safety. You reminded us that a civilization forced into submission is not truly civilized at all." "What are you saying?" Eva asked carefully. "We are proposing a new treaty," the Thalrian said. "One between equals. Full membership in the Galactic Council, with all rights and privileges. No protectorate status. No oversight. Complete sovereignty for Earth and all human colonies. Jake stood up slowly. Why? Why are you offering this now? There was a long silence. Then a voice came from an unexpected source, a small delegate from the Bravani cluster looking nervous but determined. Because you changed everything, the Bravani said. After you defeated the enforcement fleet, 12 species left the Council's protectorate system. 7 more demanded new treaties with better terms. 30 species sent representatives to ask how humanity built your quantum disruptors. The galaxy is changing because you dared to say no. Another delegate spoke up, this one from a species Eva didn't recognize. The younger species see what you did and they want the same. They want freedom. They want respect. The Council can either adapt or become irrelevant. The Thalrian diplomat's crystalline form seemed to dim slightly. For centuries, we believed that strict control was necessary to maintain peace. We thought that giving smaller species freedom would lead to chaos and war. Your defiance proved us wrong. Free peoples can be stronger than controlled ones. The galaxy is better when all species stand as equals. Eva leaned back in her chair. Her mind was racing. Could this be real? Could the Council actually be offering genuine equality? We need guarantees, she said. Real guarantees. Treaties with independent verification, and humanity will maintain its military forces. We won't disarm just because you ask nicely this time. We would expect nothing less, the Thalrian said. A truly sovereign species must have the means to defend itself. The negotiations took 3 weeks. Eva and Jake worked with teams of lawyers, diplomats, and military advisors sent from Earth. Every word of the treaty was examined and debated. Every clause was tested for loopholes. The final treaty was unlike anything in galactic history. It didn't just grant humanity full Council membership. It also established new protocols for how the Council would interact with younger species in the future. The age of automatic protectorate status was over. From now on, any species that reached space travel capability would be offered true partnership, not servitude. Smaller species celebrated across the galaxy. The Bravani cluster threw celebrations that lasted for days. The Keth Union sent a formal thank you message to Earth, saying that humanity had accomplished what they had been trying to do for decades. On the Defiance, Admiral Danny Price read the treaty and allowed himself to smile. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had won not just a battle, but something much bigger. They had changed the galaxy. Commander Peter Santos, watching from his post on the outer rim, felt relief wash over him like a wave. He called his daughter immediately. "Dad," Melissa said when she answered, her face bright on the video screen. "Did you see the news? We're in the Council now. Like really in it." "I saw," Peter said, and he couldn't stop smiling. "You were right," Melissa said. "You told me we'd be okay." "And we are." "Yeah, kiddo, we are." Dr. Karen White stood in the rebuilt Eden 7 station. The repairs had taken months, but the station was operational again. New people had been assigned here. New scientists and engineers ready to continue the work. On the wall of the main corridor, there was now a memorial. 200 names carved into polished metal. The people who had died defending humanity's freedom. Karen touched one of the names gently. "We did it," she whispered. "We won." On Earth, President Richard Graham gave one final speech about the treaty. 6 months ago, we walked away from the Galactic Council because they offered us slavery. Today, we walk back to them as equals. This was never about hatred or anger. This was about dignity. This was about the simple truth that all beings deserve to be free. We fought for that truth. We bled for it. And now the galaxy is better because of it. In cities across Earth and throughout human colonies, people celebrated. But the celebration was different from the wild joy of the military victory. This was deeper. This was the understanding that something fundamental had changed. Not just for humanity, but for the entire galaxy. Eva Morrison stood with her brother Jake on the observation deck of Haven's rest station and watched the stars. "Do you think it will last?" Jake asked. "Do you think the Council will really change?" "I don't know," Eva said honestly. "But I know we made them understand something important. Freedom isn't a gift that powerful people give to weak ones. Freedom is a right, and anyone who tries to take it away will face resistance." "We got lucky," Jake said. "The quantum disruptors worked. The Council fleet retreated. Things could have gone very differently." "Maybe," Eva agreed. "But luck favors those who refuse to give up. We could have accepted their first offer. We could have bowed and scraped and hoped they'd treat us well. Instead, we stood up, we said no. And it turns out that mattered." Jake smiled. "You know what I think the real victory is? It's not that we beat them in battle. It's not even that they changed their minds. The real victory is that dozens of other species saw us do it and thought, maybe we can do that too. Maybe we don't have to accept being treated as lesser. Change spreads like that, Eva said. One person stands up and it makes it easier for the next person. One species says no, and it shows others they can say no too. They stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching ships from dozens of species come and go from the station. Humans and Keth and Bravani and others, all moving freely through space that had once been controlled so tightly. Finally, Jake broke the silence. What do you think humanity will do now? Now that we're actually part of the galactic community? Ava thought about it. I think we'll do what we've always done. We'll explore. We'll learn. We'll build relationships with other species. We'll make mistakes and hopefully learn from them. We'll be human, which means we'll be messy and loud and sometimes annoying, but also curious and creative and stubborn as hell. That sounds about right, Jake laughed. And maybe, Eva continued, we'll help other species find their courage too. We'll show them that you don't have to be the strongest or the most advanced to deserve respect. You just have to be willing to stand up for yourself. Jake nodded. The galaxy will never be the same. No, Eva agreed. It won't, and that's a good thing. Far away on the Thalrian homeworld, High Chancellor Zarthun stood in its private chambers and looked at a hologram of Earth, the small blue planet that had changed everything. Zarthun had,